On August 14, 2024, a survey drone captured a heat signature inside a cave system that does not appear on any official United States Geological Survey map. The shape was human, but it wasn't moving. When search teams reached the coordinates, they found Marcus and Sarah Thorne, missing since 2020, sitting in total darkness, staring at a wall of solid limestone. They hadn't lost a single pound of body weight in 4 years. This is where it stops making sense. Ask yourself how two people survive in a sealed environment without a light source, a water supply, or a single scrap of discarded food packaging. Before they were the cave dwellers of Mineral County, Marcus and Sarah were the people you want with you in a crisis. Marcus was a former search and rescue coordinator with 12 years of experience in high-altitude medicine. Sarah was a structural engineer who specialized in subterranean stability. They didn't just go for a hike, they prepared for a mission. On September 12, 2020, they packed a 2019 Mercedes Sprinter van with 3 months of supplies, a satellite redundant communication array, and enough topographical data to map a small moon. They were professional, they were cautious, and they were vanished. The last footage of their vehicle was captured by a Forest Service fire cam at 2:14 p.m. The van is traveling 15 miles per hour. Marcus is driving. Sarah is looking at a physical map. At 2:16 p.m., the van should have passed a second camera located just 2 miles up the road. It never arrived. Between those 2 points, the road is flanked by a vertical rock face on the left and a 400-foot drop-off on the right. There are no turnoffs, no skid marks, no broken branches. The search began within 6 hours because Marcus had set a dead man switch on his GPS. If he didn't check in by 8 p.m., an alert went to the local sheriff. The first responders found the van exactly where it shouldn't be. It was parked in the middle of the road, engine idling, doors locked from the inside. Sarah's phone was on the dashboard. It was recording a voice memo. For 14 minutes, the audio captures nothing but the sound of the air conditioning. Then, at the 14-minute and 2-second mark, Sarah speaks. She says, "Marcus, the shadows are moving faster than the sun." Her voice isn't panicked, it's observant. It's the voice of an engineer noting a flaw in a blueprint. But here is what the Mineral County Sheriff's Office didn't release until the 2022 deposition. When they broke the window to clear the van, the interior temperature was recorded at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the outside mountain air being a crisp 42 degrees. There was no mechanical explanation for the heat, no fire, no heater malfunction. Investigators call this a localized thermal anomaly. It means the van was absorbing energy from a source they couldn't see. You're standing on that road now. It's 2020. You see the van. You see the two people you love inside, but they aren't looking at you. They are looking at the rock face that has no openings, no caves, no cracks. You blink and the van is empty. The search lasted 11 months. They used cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and thermal imaging from satellites. They found nothing. No clothing fibers, no footprints, no DNA. It was as if the Thornes had been dematerialized. The case went cold until a private investigator hired by Sarah's father found a detail in the original evidence photos that the police had ignored. In the reflection of the van's side mirror, there is a figure standing on the road. It isn't a person. It's a distortion, a ripple in the air that looks like heat rising from asphalt, but it's shaped like a doorway. This photo was taken at 3:30 p.m. on the day they disappeared. The investigator calculated the angle. The doorway led directly into the solid granite of the mountain. No one has explained this. No one has tried. Then came the phone call in 2024. A hiker found a GoPro camera at the base of a cliff 5 miles from the disappearance site. The footage starts on September 12, 2020. It shows Marcus and Sarah walking through a forest that does not exist in Colorado. The trees are white. The sky is a bruised purple. Marcus looks at the camera and says, "We've been walking for 3 hours, but the van is still 10 feet behind us." He turns the camera around. The Mercedes Sprinter is there, but it's translucent. You can see the trees through the metal. None of this explains what was found in Marcus's pocket when they were finally pulled from that cave 4 years later. It was a receipt from a gas station in Mineral County. The date on the receipt is September 12th, 2024, the day they were found. But the receipt was printed at 4:15 p.m. They were rescued at 9 a.m. The 2024 recovery of Marcus and Sarah Thorne did not bring the relief the families expected. It brought a clinical, cold-blooded terror that the Mineral County Sheriff's Department tried to bury under a mountain of bureaucratic red tape. When the extraction team entered the cave, a cavern that geologists later confirmed was chemically impossible, consisting of smooth, glass-like walls with no entrance or exit point, they found the couple sitting in a state of catatonic grace. Their eyes were open, their pupils dilated to the point where the irises were mere slivers of color. They were not emaciated, they were not dehydrated. They looked exactly as they had in their 2020 missing persons posters, right down to the crispness of their hiking flannels. But here is the first contradiction that shattered the official narrative: the dust. Forensic technicians noted that while the cave floor was covered in a 2-inch layer of fine gray sediment, there were no footprints leading to where the Thorns sat. They weren't sitting on the dust, they were sitting under it, as if they had materialized in that exact spot years ago and the earth had simply settled around them. Yet their vitals were those of people who had just finished a light jog. Marcus's heart rate was a steady 82 beats per minute. Sarah's was 78. The investigation shifted from a rescue to a containment within 4 hours. At 1:12 p.m. on the day of the recovery, the FBI's evidence response team arrived and immediately declared the cave a Level 4 biohazard site. This wasn't because of a virus, it was because of the hum. Every agent who stepped within 50 feet of the cave entrance reported a low-frequency vibration that rattled their teeth and caused immediate projectile vomiting. One deputy, an 18-year veteran named Miller, refused to leave his post near the perimeter. He claimed he could hear Sarah Thorne whispering, not through the air, but inside his own inner ear. When he was forcibly removed, he had to be sedated. He later told Internal Affairs, "She wasn't asking for help. She was reciting the GPS coordinates of every person standing outside the cave." The evidence gathered from the van in 2020 was reopened, and this is where the timeline begins to fracture. You remember the locked doors, the interior heat? Technicians re-examining the van's onboard computer found a data log that had been missed during the initial sweep. At 2:15 p.m., the exact moment the van vanished from the fire cam's view, the vehicle's internal clock accelerated. For the electronics inside that van, 60 minutes passed in the span of 1 second. The first wrong turn wasn't a physical left or right on a mountain road, it was a temporal detour. The logs show the van's engine temperature spiking to 400 degrees, yet the coolant levels remained unchanged. This detail wasn't released until 2022. Ask yourself why the state would hide a mechanical impossibility unless they knew the mountain itself was the mechanism. Wait. Look at the photographs of the cave wall behind the couple. At first glance, it's just jagged limestone, but if you overlay the topographical map Sarah was holding in the 2020 fire cam footage, the cracks in the rock align perfectly with the trail they were supposed to take. It wasn't a cave, it was a physical manifestation of their intended route, frozen in stone. This brings us to the obsessed civilian, Sarah's younger brother, Leo. Leo spent 3 years living in a trailer at the base of the trailhead. He didn't believe the missing narrative. He believed his sister had been absorbed. He began recording the electromagnetic frequencies, EMF, of the mountain. In April 2023, he captured a signal. It wasn't a radio broadcast. It was a digital pulse, a repeating binary code. When translated, it revealed a series of dates. The first date was August 14th, 2024, the exact day they were found. The final date? It hasn't happened yet. It's 6 months from today. The system didn't like Leo. The National Park Service issued 3 separate restraining orders against him, citing interference with sensitive geological surveys. But Leo had a friend in the county morgue, a man who saw the medical reports that never made it to the press. When the Thornes were brought in for evaluation, they were placed in a high-security wing of the Denver Medical Center. The report stated that while their physical bodies were healthy, their bone density was inconsistent with terrestrial gravity. Their skeletons had become 30% denser, a physiological change that should have taken decades of specialized centrifuge training to achieve. Marcus's blood work was even more disturbing. His hemoglobin levels were saturated with an unidentified isotope, an element that does not appear on the periodic table. Investigators call this signature zero. It's a chemical byproduct of exposure to high-energy particle displacement. But here's what the police didn't release until the 2019 cold case files were leaked by a whistleblower. Marcus and Sarah weren't the first. In 1994, a solo climber vanished in the same 2-mile stretch. In 2007, a family of 4. In every case, the impossible geography applies. Their belongings were found in locked containers in plain sight, on trails that had been searched by hundreds of volunteers. The authorities call these anomalous disappearances, but a retired detective who worked the 2007 case has a different name for it. He calls it the harvest. He points to the fact that every victim was the competent person, individuals with high IQs, survival training, and no history of mental illness. If they couldn't survive the mountain, what chance do you have? You who go into the woods with a dying cell phone and a plastic water bottle. At 3:45 a.m. on the third night of their recovery, Sarah Thorne spoke her first words to a nurse. She didn't ask where she was. She didn't ask for her parents. She looked the nurse in the eye and said, "The light is still behind us. We just stopped moving so it could catch up." Then she began to scream. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a rhythmic tonal sound that shattered the glass in the observation window. The hospital records for that night were erased by server failure, but the nurse, who resigned the next day, kept her notes. Sarah's skin, she wrote, felt like cold marble, and her pulse didn't beat. It vibrated. Now consider the theory no one wants to believe. If the van was locked from the inside and the couple was found in a sealed cave, they never actually left the vehicle. The vehicle, the road, and the mountain became one singular point in space-time. The evidence that changes everything was found in Sarah's pocket, a small smooth stone. When geologists at the university analyzed it, they found it wasn't a stone at all. It was a piece of the van's dashboard, compressed by thousands of tons of pressure into the shape of a river rock. The material had been molecularly rearranged. The stakes are no longer about 2 missing people. They are about the ground beneath your feet. The search team leader later admitted in a leaked audio clip, "We weren't looking for Marcus and Sarah. We were looking for the leak. We were told the mountain had a hole in it, and we had to plug it before anything else came through." This is the us versus them reality. The government knows the Mineral County mountains aren't just rock and pine, they are a boundary, and that boundary is failing. Why did they look delusional when found? Because they weren't looking at the rescue team. They were looking at the shadows Sarah mentioned in her final voice memo. To them, the 4 years hadn't passed as a sequence of days. They had passed as a single, elongated moment of observation. They were watching us. They were watching the search parties walk past them for years, unable to reach out because they were vibrating at a frequency the human eye perceives as nothing. As we move into the deeper evidence, the items found in the cave that didn't belong to the Thornes, the dread shifts from mystery to a warning. Among the sediment on the cave floor, investigators found a 1920s-era compass, a digital watch from 2035, and a wedding ring with an inscription that matches a woman who hasn't been born yet. This isn't a kidnapping, it's a collection. The 2024 medical evaluation of the Thorne prints moved beyond the realm of unusual biology and into the territory of existential horror. When the lead physician at the Denver containment facility attempted to draw blood from Sarah Thorne, the needle didn't just fail to penetrate her skin, it shattered. The lab technician reported that the skin didn't feel like human tissue, it felt like a high-density polymer, or perhaps a surface with no friction at all. Despite this, Sarah began to speak in a voice that was a perfect digital recreation of her 2020 self. She wasn't speaking to the doctors. She was speaking to her husband Marcus, who was being held in a separate isolation ward 4 floors away. Security footage from that night shows both Marcus and Sarah sitting in identical positions, staring at the upper left corner of their respective rooms. At 3:11 a.m., their mouth movements synchronized perfectly. They were reciting a list of names of people who had not yet been reported missing. This detail was suppressed under a national security leaflet, but the obsessed civilian, Leo, managed to intercept a partial audio transmission. The list included a local high school teacher, a visiting geologist from out of state, and a 3-year-old child from a nearby campsite. Within 48 hours of this recitation, all 3 individuals vanished in the same 2-mile stretch of the Mineral County Road. None of this explains what was found in the 2035 artifacts discovered on the cave floor. Among the items was a small titanium-cased data drive. When the FBI's cyber forensics unit managed to bypass the encryption, a process that required a quantum computing array, they found a single video file. The date stamp was July 19, 2035. The video shows the same cave, but the walls are no longer stone. They are transparent, looking out over a Colorado landscape that has been completely reclaimed by a forest of those same white translucent trees seen in the 2020 GoPro footage. In the video, a woman who looks exactly like Sarah's unborn daughter is seen walking toward the camera. She isn't crying. She isn't scared. She looks into the lens and says, "The harvest is the only way the mountain remembers us." But here's what the police didn't release until the 2019 cold case review began to leak. The signature 0 isotope found in Marcus's blood is the same substance found in the soil of fairy circles in the UK and the Devil's Tramping Ground in North Carolina. It is a biological marker of a transdimensional anchor. This is where the theory shifts from lost in a cave to hidden in plain sight. The theories no one wants to believe suggest that Marcus and Sarah weren't taken to another planet or a subterranean civilization. They were shifted 10 degrees out of phase with our reality. They were standing on that road for 4 years, watching the search parties, watching the seasons change, unable to be seen because their light was vibrating at a frequency the human eye processes as air. You're standing at that trailhead now. You see a closed sign. You think you're safe because you're staying behind the tape. But the evidence contradiction from the 2025 analysis of the cabin shows that the door isn't stationary. It follows the frequency of the observer. If you are looking for it, if your brain is tuned to the dread of it, you become the key. The search team leader, Elias, didn't just resign because the walls were breathing. He resigned because when he looked into the cave, he didn't see Marcus and Sarah. He saw himself. He saw a version of himself that had been in that cave since 1994. This brings us to the most disturbing evidence of all, the echo recordings. In 2025, Leo placed high-sensitivity seismic microphones along the rock face where the van vanished. He didn't capture the sound of shifting tectonic plates. He captured the sound of the 2020 search party. He could hear his own voice from 4 years ago, calling out Sarah's name. But the voices weren't coming from the past. They were coming from inside the rock. The mountain isn't just a place, it's a recording medium. It stores the energy of every person who enters its thermal void, and eventually it plays them back. But why were they delusional when found? Forensic analysts now believe the Thornes weren't suffering from a mental break. They were suffering from sensory overlap. To them, the rescue team in 2024 was happening at the same time as their disappearance in 2020. They were experiencing 4 years of linear time as a single, overwhelming vertical stack of moments. Imagine seeing every person you've ever met, standing in the same room, all talking at once. That is what was happening inside their heads. The system has now designated the entire Mineral County Range as a high-value research zone. This is code for a no-fly, no-entry zone. They aren't trying to protect you from the mountain. They are trying to protect the mountain from being understood. Because if the public realizes that the geography is fluid, that a road you've driven 1,000 times can simply fold, the social contract expires. You wouldn't go to work. You wouldn't go to school. You wouldn't leave your house if you knew the floor could become a ceiling without warning. In the final weeks of their observation, the Thorne prints began to change physically. The medical staff noted that their skin started to take on a slightly metallic sheen. By the time the Department of Defense stepped in to move them to an undisclosed location, likely Site 4 in Nevada, they were no longer breathing oxygen. Their lungs had ceased to function, yet they remained conscious. Their last transmission was a text message sent from a phone that wasn't connected to any network. It was sent to every person who had ever looked at the missing poster of Marcus and Sarah. The message read, "You've already seen it. You just haven't realized the door is open behind you." The garage still operates. The road in Mineral County is technically closed, but the gravel is still there. People still park their cars at the base of the trail to take photos of the haunted mountains. They look at the rock face and see nothing but granite, but the thermal void is still there, and the heat is rising. The final transfer of Marcus and Sarah Thorne from the Denver containment facility to the high-security subterranean annex at Site 4 was not a medical transport, it was a decommissioning. According to a classified logistics manifest leaked in late 2025, the patients were not moved in an ambulance but in lead-lined canisters typically reserved for spent nuclear fuel. This detail wasn't released to the families. Ask yourself why a biological human would require shielding that stops gamma radiation. The answer lies in the final anomaly. By October 2024, the Thorne prints were no longer reflecting light in the visible spectrum. In security footage, they appeared as two human-shaped holes in the world, silhouettes of pure static that caused the digital cameras to glitch and reset every 90 seconds. The What This Means for You section of this investigation isn't a theory. It's a warning about the nature of the ground you walk on. We have always assumed that the Earth is a solid, ancient object governed by the slow crawl of geology. The Thorne case suggests the opposite. It suggests that the Mineral County Mountains, and perhaps dozens of other vortex locations globally, are actually a form of biological architecture. The mountain didn't trap Marcus and Sarah, it sampled them. Investigators call this the recursive loop. If you find yourself on a trail and the birds stop singing, not just a quiet forest but a total acoustic vacuum, you have approximately 14 minutes to exit the radius before the mirror stabilizes. This is where the system becomes the true antagonist. On December 12, 2025, the Department of the Interior quietly reclassified 40,000 acres of public land as non-Euclidean hazardous zones. They aren't looking for missing hikers anymore. They are looking for the source code. Documents recovered from a shredded file at the Mineral County Sheriff's Office mention a project called Operation Glass Wall. The goal was to determine if the mountain's ability to fold space could be weaponized or used for deep space travel. But the mountain isn't a tool. It's an apex predator that eats time. Consider the survivor's guilt of Leo, Sarah's brother. In January 2026, Leo returned to the road one last time. He didn't bring a camera or a microphone. He brought a high-precision laser rangefinder. He pointed it at the rock face where the van had vanished. In a normal world, the laser would hit the granite and bounce back, giving a reading of maybe 50 feet. But Leo's device gave a reading of infinity. The rock was a visual illusion. To the eye, it was solid stone. To the laser, it was an endless void. Leo's final blog post, uploaded from the trailhead, contained a single sentence. "The mountain isn't growing, it's waiting for us to fill it up." The evidence that changes everything was a discovery made in the Thornes' home 4 years after they vanished. A private investigator found a hidden compartment in Marcus's study. Inside was a logbook dating back to 2018. Marcus hadn't stumbled into the mountain by accident. He had been tracking his own disappearance for years. He had found echoes of himself in historical records. A man matching his exact description with his exact fingerprints was recorded as having vanished in the same spot in 1894, 1924, and 1954. Every 30 years, Marcus Thorne enters the mountain. Every 30 years, the mountain resets the clock. This brings us to the theory no one wants to believe. We are not the first version of this world. The 2035 data drive found in the cave wasn't from the future, it was from a previous iteration. The mountain is a hard drive, and Marcus and Sarah are files that keep getting corrupted and restored. The delusional behavior they exhibited wasn't madness, it was the realization that they were copies of copies of copies. When Sarah said, "Ray, the light is still behind us," she wasn't talking about a physical sun. She was talking about the delete command. The Mineral County Sheriff's Office has been completely restaffed since the recovery. The original deputies have all retired or moved out of state. The new officers don't carry standard sidearms. They carry devices that look remarkably like the seismic sensors Leo used. They aren't policing the people, they are policing the leaks. If you drive through that area today, you'll notice that the mile markers between 112 and 114 are missing. The impossible geography is being scrubbed from the maps, but the physical space remains. What does this mean for you? It means that the next time you're on a scenic drive and you feel that sudden, inexplicable urge to pull over, to look at a particular rock formation or enter a small, uncharted cave, you are feeling the pull. It's a gravitational lure designed to bring the competent person into the mechanism. The mountain doesn't want the weak. It wants the explorers, the engineers, the people who will try to solve it. It wants your data. As of this recording, Marcus and Sarah Thorne are officially listed as deceased due to complications from prolonged exposure. But there was no funeral. No bodies were returned to the family. In the Mineral County Cemetery, there are 2 headstones, but if you bring a thermal camera to the grave sites, you'll find that the ground beneath them is 0.0 Kelvin. The thermal void has moved. The garage where Marcus parked his van before the trip still operates. People park in space 4C every day. They walk past the concrete pillars, oblivious to the fact that the signature 0 isotope is now embedded in the foundation. The mirror isn't just in the mountains anymore. It's in the city. It's in the infrastructure. It's in the code of the very screen you are looking at right now. No one has explained why the 2035 video ended with a shot of your own street. No one has tried. The authorities will tell you this is a hoax, a campfire story, a glitch in the record. But ask yourself why your phone's internal clock just skipped 2 seconds. Ask yourself why the shadows in your room aren't pointing away from the light. The road is still there, the mountain is still breathing, and the harvest has only just begun. The mirror is looking for its next competent person. You've already seen it. You just haven't realized the door is open behind you. The garage still operates. Cars park on that level every day. No one looks at Space 4C. No one looks at the reflection in the window. If they did, they might see that the person looking back isn't wearing the same clothes they are. They might see that the light in the reflection is purple and the trees are white. Don't look back. Just keep driving.